This might be one of the most heartbreaking comic stories ever written. It begins with a peaceful family living quietly in the countryside and ends with a man bleeding to death on a cold floor, completely alone. Out in the countryside, a small cabin sits on top of a hill. Down below, a massive man in a red-striped sailor shirt works the fields. He's enormous, easily twice the size of an average man. But despite his intimidating appearance, there's something gentle about him. Soon, his young daughter runs down the hill toward him, laughing as she throws her arms around his waist. The giant smiles warmly and carries her back home for dinner, where his wife is waiting with their dog. During dinner, we really understand just how big he is. His wife and daughter look tiny sitting beside him. The girl's mother tells her not to feed the dog, but when the dog starts whining sadly, the sailor quietly gives it some of his food anyway, making both the dog and his daughter happy. In this small moment, you can see his true nature. He might look like a monster to strangers, but to his family, he's simply a loving husband and father. Later that night before bed, the daughter talks excitedly about their trip to the city the next day. She hopes they'll get to see the giant boats at the docks. Then she asks her mother a question. Are there any men in the city as strong as her father? Her mother smiles and says she doubts it. We see the three of them together, wrapped in the giant's arms, and it's clear that this family doesn't need much to be happy. They only need each other. The next day, they travel into the city by carriage. Their first stop is a small puppet show. Two puppets fight each other in a silly boxing match. One dodges all the attacks until the other gets tired, then humiliates him in front of the crowd. Everyone bursts out laughing, including the giant sailor. It's a simple moment of joy. After the show, the daughter once again asks if they can go see the big boats at the docks. Eventually, her mother agrees, and the three of them walk down toward the harbor. Standing by the water, the little girl looks at the ships in amazement and proudly declares that one day she wants to become a sailor too. Up until this moment, the story feels warm and wholesome. But this is exactly where everything falls apart. As the family stands by the docks, a group of rough men approaches them from behind. They're looking for trouble. At first, some of them hesitate, seeing the giant's size. But their leader reminds them that even a giant can't fight several men at once. The sailor immediately steps in front of his wife and daughter, raising his fists and telling them to stay back. The men attack. At first, the giant manages to fight them off. His strength is overwhelming, and he knocks several of them down. But eventually the leader pulls out a knife and cuts deeply across the sailor's chest. The giant is quickly overwhelmed. They beat him to the ground and brutally scar his face, leaving him bleeding and barely conscious. Then things get even worse. The men drag his wife away and order one of them to deal with the daughter. Through blurred vision and tears, the giant watches helplessly as his daughter is killed right in front of him. He screams in agony and tries to stand, but one of the men kicks him over the edge of the dock. Barely holding on to the edge, he sees the last glimpse of his wife being taken away before he's kicked again and falls into the dark water below. And just like that, his entire world is gone. Sometime later, fishermen discover the giant drifting far out at sea. Somehow, he's still alive. They drag his massive body onto their boat, shocked that anyone could survive injuries like his. But when the giant wakes up, he's filled with rage and confusion. He lashes out wildly until the fishermen are forced to knock him unconscious. They chain him up for safety and decide to take him back to shore. That night, while still bound on the boat, the giant has a terrible vision. He sees his daughter standing nearby, crying for help, before blood suddenly pours from her neck. The image makes him howl in pain. The next day, when they return to the harbor, an old man notices the chained giant on the fisherman's boat. The man introduces himself as Jack.
Instead of turning the sailor over to the police, Jack offers the fisherman money to bring him to his apartment instead. Curious and tempted by the payment, they agree. When the giant wakes up again, he finds himself in a dark room. His wounds have been roughly stitched up, and the old man sits nearby drinking. Jack explains that he heard about what happened at the docks. He says he understands loss, because he once lost his own wife and child. But Jack believes that the giant arriving in his life is no coincidence. He believes it's God answering his prayers.
Then he tells the giant about something called Fight Night, an underground bare-knuckle fighting ring where the best fighter in the country reigns undefeated. His name is Walleye Thompson. Jack wants the giant to fight him. At first, the giant says nothing, but then Jack reveals the one thing that makes him listen. The giant's wife survived the attack, and Jack knows where she is. 3 days later, they arrive at the fight. The underground arena is brutal. The floor is stained with blood, and men cheer as fighters beat each other senseless. Walleye Thompson stands undefeated, knocking opponent after opponent to the ground. Then Jack announces his challenger, the unknown giant. When the massive sailor steps into the arena, the entire room falls silent. He towers over Thompson, his scarred face and stitched wounds making him look almost inhuman. But when the fight begins, the giant refuses to fight. Walleye punches him again and again. Blood pours from the sailor's face. Still, he doesn't raise his fists. Jack screams at him to fight back. Finally, after being beaten nearly to his knees, the giant begins remembering his daughter, his wife, the happy moments they shared. And in that moment, something inside him snaps. He throws a single punch, just one. Walleye Thompson collapses instantly. The undefeated champion is knocked out with a single blow. The giant doesn't celebrate. He immediately turns to Jack and demands to know where his wife is. Jack finally tells him, Grace Hospital. The giant runs through the city, still bleeding, ignoring the stares of strangers until he finally reaches the hospital. Inside, he finds his wife Lucy lying in a bed, badly injured. He sits beside her in silence. Soon, a nurse quietly confirms the truth. Lucy isn't going to survive. The giant asks a heartbreaking question. If this is God's plan, then what is God's plan for him? Later that night, Lucy wakes up briefly and tells him she just wants to go home. He begs her not to leave him alone in the world. But as they hold each other, Lucy dies in his arms. The next morning, the giant prepares to return home with the bodies of his wife and daughter. But before he can leave, he's suddenly attacked from behind and knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, he's chained in a dark room once again. Walleye Thompson's allies are furious about what happened at the fight. They offer the giant a new deal. Become their champion. Fight for them. Spill blood for their entertainment. The giant calmly refuses. He says that his whole life people treated him like an animal. But when he was with his wife and daughter, he was just a man, a husband, a father. Now they're gone, and he has nothing left to fight for. Enraged by his defiance, the men stab him repeatedly before leaving him and Jack to die on the floor. As Jack begins to panic, realizing he's dying, the giant gently comforts him. Jack apologizes for everything he's done. The giant forgives him. They talk about the women they loved, about how they met, about the simple happiness they once had. Eventually, Jack dies beside him. And as the giant slowly bleeds out, he sees one final vision. A small dog licking the tears from his face, reminding him of the life he once had. Memories of his wife, his daughter, their quiet home on the hill. And then, the giant finally dies. In the end, the man the world saw as a monster was never a monster at all. He was simply a husband and a father who loved his family more than anything. And when they were taken from him, the world took the last piece of his humanity with them.